Right at the top, we're talking about the war with Iran. Thousands more U.S. forces arriving in the Middle East. We're talking about more than 3,500 troops, including 2,500 Marines newly arrived to that region as the war enters month 2. Now, this troop buildup only intensifies attention to that messaging that seems a little bit mixed from the president. He voiced optimism about talks with Iran and then issued new threats to Iran's power plants, oil wells, and Karg Island.
Are you considering still putting boots on the ground, and would you do that without going to Congress?
I just have lots of alternatives. We have tremendous numbers of ships over there. We don't need them all because of, the power. Look, I would say we're just like we're ahead of schedule on the ballroom. In a much bigger way, we're ahead of schedule with Iran.
So earlier, the president told the Financial Times he may send troops to Karg Island to, quote, take their oil, but acknowledged that he would also mean the U.S. would have to be in Iran for what the president said was a while. Meanwhile, the White House has not denied a Washington Post report the Pentagon is preparing for weeks of ground operations. Of course, Iran has said if the U.S. launches a ground invasion, it will step up attacks on U.S. allies. Case in point, you see that right here. This oil refinery in Israel is the latest target of Iranian strikes. So live now to CBS News Pentagon reporter Eleanor Watson. So Ellie, what can you tell us about the arrival of those troops in the region?
Yeah, Reed, even as the president is pushing for those negotiations, thousands of Marines arrived in the region over the weekend, and we reported this morning that hundreds of special operations forces are now there too, with more U.S. troops on the way. This is all to give the president options if negotiations fail. Those options could include things like reopening the Strait of Hormuz, seizing the highly enriched uranium from deep inside Iranian territory, or capturing Karg Island, which, as you mentioned, the president has been threatening. Karg Island is a crucial hub for the export of Iran's oil. About 90% of Iran's oil is exported by going through that terminal where the oil is loaded on tankers. Destroying the oil infrastructure on that island could have wider consequences for the economy, so capturing it is another option the U.S. could pursue. But we should note that island is just 15 miles off the coast of Iran, so even if a mission is doable, the troops there would risk threats from cruise missiles, from drones, from fast attack speedboats, and likely risk more casualties.
Yeah, right. Well, let's also talk about some recent hits. Of course, attacks on Israel by the Houthis of Yemen, and NATO forces, we understand, intercepted a missile that targeted Turkey. Are we at the point where these hits not only signal maybe an escalation, but also more of an expansion of the war in a regional sense?
Well, the ballistic missile that apparently targeted Turkey, that's now the third missile that Iran has launched towards Turkey that has been intercepted by NATO forces. That's concerning because Turkey is a member of NATO, and if there were to be a successful attack, that could require some NATO military response with other allies. But so far, Turkey, through those different interceptions, has not shown any indications it's leaning towards invoking that clause. Now, to the south, in Yemen, the Houthis, which are backed by Iran, entered the conflict for the first time since it started by launching this missile towards Israel. They have kind of a limited capacity for targeting Israel, but their real threat could be, because of their location on the Red Sea, their real threat could be posed to global shipping. Back in 2024, 2025, if you remember, Reed, the Houthis did launch several attacks with missiles and drones targeting commercial traffic, forcing companies to make the decision to go around Africa instead of through the Suez Canal. That disruption, if it happens this time, would only add to some of the impacts we're seeing on the economy that were already being felt by the essential closure of the Strait of Hormuz.
All right, Ellie Watson watching this closely as we start a brand new week. Thank you so much.